Okay, is the mic working? Mic working? Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming down. My name's Jimmy. I work for Skiddle. Obviously, the reason we're all here tonight is we've recently conducted a survey into the mental health problems that promoters face. It's the first survey that specifically focuses on music promoters. So what we've done tonight is we've assembled a panel of experts from various disciplines. We're going to talk about some of the findings from the survey. They're going to talk about their own experiences and problems that they've faced, also solutions. And then at the end of the panel, any questions that you guys have got, we'll open that up to the audience as well. So to start things off then, I'll let the panelists introduce themselves. So Eugene, if you could begin. Let everyone know who you are.
Hello, my name's Eugene Wild. I designed and built the new club in North London, The Cause. And I run it with my with co-founder Stuart, who's just showed up. Yeah, been open for about 9 months now. No, sorry, 6 months. Yeah, that's me.
Hi, my name is Ricardo. I'm a music promoter. I currently work for local load events. We are promoting around 150 shows a year in Southwest Folk Festival in South London.
Hi, I'm Matt Cantor. I've been in the music industry for about 25 years. I used to record music in the 90s under the name Strike, and last 20 years or so under the name The Freestylers, and I'm also a psychotherapist who's retrained.
Hi, I'm Christine Brown. I'm Director of External Affairs at leading independent music charity Help Musicians UK. We support musicians and actually the wider industry, people working in music throughout their careers with creative funding and health and welfare support. But the reason why I'm here tonight is because we launched a mental health service specifically for people working in music last year called Music Minds Matter, and I'll talk more about that later in the panel.
Hi everybody, I'm Claire Cordreaux. I'm from the British Association for Performing Arts Medicine, which is more easily known as BAPAM, and we run health services for people working in the performing arts industry, anything from mental health issues through to musculoskeletal issues, doing clinical assessments, telephone advice. We have a big directory of practitioners who all understand what performing arts looks like and therefore are sympathetic to people, and we also deliver training.
Okay, so that's the panelists. You can find any of the findings from the survey on skiddle.com/mental health, but I'll kind of read out some of the top facts that we found from there. So when we built the study and we designed it, there's a lot of promoters that work for Skiddle, and we kind of had like a presumption that maybe there was quite a bit of an issue with mental health amongst music promoters. We were quite taken aback by how big the problem is according to our survey. So the most alarming statistic is that over 80% of the people that are working in the music promotions industry suffer from constant levels of stress, anxiety and depression. And if we break down that statistic, 82% of industry professionals said that they'd suffered from stress, 67% said anxiety, 40% said they'd suffered with depression, and then 1 in 10 had said they'd developed obsessive compulsive disorder, and that was as a direct consequence of their work within music. Further along, 65% of the promoters said that they frequently felt an intense and unmanageable level of pressure. Almost half said that the work in music had often led to a constant feeling of anxiety and sadness. A little bit less than that, nearly 4 in 10, I think it's 38%, said working in promotions had affected their relationships with their partner and their spouse. 37%, this is probably something that isn't a surprise, said they frequently have financial problems, which again contributes feelings of stress, anxiety and depression. And then one of the positive things, though, that despite all these things, 36% of promoters says they still can see themselves working in the music industry for at least another 1 to 5 years. Then nearly 1 in 3, 30%, said that they frequently felt like they were spoken to in an unacceptable manner. And finally, we asked people what had bothered them the most. 45% had said that the fact that there was no regular income, 42% said the lack of support, and 25% said the effect that it has on their relationships. So that's pretty sobering, if you excuse the terminology, quite depressing statistics for us to look at. So I'm going to open this up to the panel. Is that a surprise to anyone sitting here that those statistics have been reported back? Is there anyone who wants to start?
Oh, go on then. Well, not to our charity. They're not a surprise actually. I know this study specifically around promoters, but we did a study in 2016 called "Can Music Make You Sick?", which was all genres across the whole of the UK, kind of every strand that you can think of within the music industry, whether you're a musician, DJ, producer, promoter. Our statistics weren't as high as yours, actually. Our stats, it was 2,200 people that took part in the study. Our statistics said around 71% had experienced depression and 69% had experienced anxiety. So I'm not surprised because of the study that we already had carried out. But obviously, this statistic is higher, and specifically around promoters. So yeah, I mean, I guess it shows the real height of the issue.
Okay, Eugene and Ricardo, you two are both promoters. Does this surprise you, having been involved directly in the profession?
No, not particularly. I mean, my role in the, well, especially this year. I mean, I was a promoter for a few years prior to starting work with the cause, but I think my sort of situation has been exacerbated in like I've had having to build the place and all that at the same time and help Stuart plan shows and get the club up and running. It was a serious test of what I could actually handle physically and mentally. But I mean, I'm maybe a unique example, but you know, I tore my ligament 3 times this year. That has serious impact on my mental state as well. Not being able to earn any money through my other work, and it was just the knock-on effects of this, and then also not ever actually being able to stop because of the pressure was just mounting to kind of get it all up and running and yeah, it was like these figures. I'm not surprised at all. Stress levels were at an all-time high, to say the least. So.
Would you agree with that, Ricardo?
Absolutely. I'm very not surprised about this. And when I saw the Skiddle was actually doing this kind of study, I was quite happy because as someone that is constantly involved and has been involved with independent companies for the past 6-7 years, it's something that you feel on your skin when you're working, you feel on when you start and when it gets a bit better with experience. But when you're working with someone that's probably a bit more junior, or when you have an event that's going particularly badly, or when you have a very particularly stressful time like now, because we're having Hold the Show up and coming, it's absolutely a massive issue that is also taking a lot of very, very clever people out of the work because they're not able to, to keep with that.
Okay, Matt, you've DJ'd for the past 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
And you've encountered maybe 1 or 2 promoters in that time?
Just a few, yeah.
Having that experience directly dealing from them, is this something again that's a surprise to you, or does it?
I mean, I guess being from the other side of the fence and being, a DJ, I've never really been able to sort of jump into the world of a promoter, and with that survey, yeah, it was surprising actually. I was surprised at just how stressful and how much impact it seemed to have on their lives. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking in a way like a lot of movements have been started by promoters. Even if you think about Steve Strange in the 80s, putting on nights at the Blitz and starting the whole new romantic movement, really. And then in Acid House, Paul Oakenfold was originally a promoter, and Danny Rampling, and those guys started house music, really. So, promoting actually has moved on musical movements, or, dubstep. I suppose there's Forward just around the corner with Scream and those guys, and Roast with Fabio and Groove Rider, and, so it's, I guess there's that sort of love of music that maybe gets lost in all this stress. And I guess some promoters maybe are in it for business, for business matters, But, you know, I guess it's that love of music, you know, and I think, you know, you can tend to kind of box promoters in as kind of, you know, just, you know, hustlers and business guys. But, you know, actually, a lot of them, you know, when I read that survey, I realised a lot of them do it for the love of music, you know, and even if they've lost money, if the crowd have had a good time, that makes their night. So, yeah, it was an eye-opener for me.
I think as well, one of the things that we found is we did the survey, we canvassed it to all the people that sell tickets with us. Skiddle, you may or may not know, is a platform that pretty much anyone can use. So these findings that we were getting weren't just from the promoters that people would know, your top end, it was people that were putting on nights for maybe 40 or 50 people who, again, as Matt has said, are probably just doing this for the love. And for these people, you know, they're putting on something that they, you know, they really believe in, and then perhaps sometimes they don't get that response back from the general public, and that must be, obviously Eugene and Ricardo, that must be quite a disheartening experience when you know you pour your heart and soul into something and then you don't get the response that perhaps you think you deserve.
For example, that was something that I wasn't expecting to see in this. It's probably one of the reasons you're doing this job is because you basically fill up a venue of people. They have a good time, and you know it might be very hard when you do it, but then at the end you feel rewarded. And I never felt actually that the audience was part of the problem. I've always felt that part of the problem was the nature of the job. They're stressful. You have to sell tickets if you want to run a business or if you want to make an artist happy. And so yeah, that was quite surprising for me, probably because yeah, most of them, some of them, they're just doing it for the love of music. When things involve business, paying wages, paying rent, and you know, running a company, it's probably things are a bit different.
I mean, what I'll do here is I'll read out some of the responses that we got from promoters. Obviously, these are all completely anonymous. But we're talking, one promoter discussed how they'd had heart attacks as a consequence of the job, how they'd lost over a stone in weight simply because of the stress of one single event. They'd had death threats when they had to cancel a free event. Someone else has put, I am 100% more real as a result of my role. This year I've took on the biggest shows of my life, and the effort to make them profitable is enormous, and the stress that comes with £100,000 riding on your head is incredible. So that you know, that's making me feel sick just reading it. Extreme tiredness and depression, pneumonia and fatigue, insomnia, drug and alcohol abuse. You feel like a failure at events when you paid for advertising and someone filed door-to-door, has no interest straight away. So, I mean, these are all wonderful encouragements for people to start promoting their own events. But, you know, there's obviously people who are undertaking really, you know, kind of serious, you know, problems and, you know, real kick in the teeth for those things. So, obviously, Christine and Clay, you're coming from the kind of the help platform thing. How many experiences have you had with dealing promoters directly where they've come to you with these sorts of issues? Does that happen regularly?
It doesn't really, actually. And what was interesting about the research is a lot of the things like insomnia, like nutrition, come up time and time again in experience of musicians and research with musicians. And what I thought was so interesting about this was the focus on promoters, and I don't think they get the visibility that you know that other groups get within the industry, and to see that there are similar sorts of issues in a way isn't surprising, but I bet they're not getting the same sort of access to support that other parts of the industry are, and that was something we were talking about how we could try and make happen.
Yeah, I would agree. I said earlier about our study, which was industry-wide. I think it's really important, and I think you've done an amazing job of putting a spotlight on promoters, because I think as help musicians, we have, well, for our 97-year history, have focused a lot on musicians, and it was only 2 years ago that we realized it was important that our help was expanded to the whole of the industry, because other areas were getting overlooked. So we've been looking, our help now is for everyone that works in music for that reason. So, but we don't, I don't have any statistics which are specifically around promoters that I can share with you, but what I can say is a lot of these themes that you're talking about are things that the people come to the charity with every single day, like financial issues are really high on the agenda. Mental health's really complex. It's often attached to financial issues or physical issues, as you were talking about. Also, the fact there's no real security it's a regular income, it's a regular employment. You're away from home a lot, which can take its toll not on you but just your family. Yeah, lots of issues like you know, we are aware of, and we have people coming to us every day with them.
Yeah, because obviously, you know, mental health problems aren't restricted to music promoters in society, and there's a lot of kind of like variables that are similar in other professions. So the fact that you are self-employed, you don't have a regular steady income. I think one thing, when we were doing some more research into this after the findings, there's been a lot of academic discourse on kind of hierarchy within an industry, and if you perceive yourself to be lower down in this, you know, this kind of like hierarchy, that you in turn, that can have a negative impact on your health. So maybe that happens with music promoters and stuff. But what is it, and this is a question to the entire panel, what is it that's unique about being a music promoter which makes you more susceptible to these kind of problems? And that's for anyone to answer.
I don't know, when I first looked at it, I was sort of thinking, I mean, I'm not a promoter, I don't know, but I'd imagine it's a bit like throwing a party and wondering if people are going to turn up all the time, which sounds really hard, you know. I got really stressed doing my 40th, you know, and wondering how many people were going to come, and just having to do that for a living, you know, just, yeah, I mean, it sounds really stressful.
I think it is a lot about like that. I mean, as a club, you know, to keep there's so many elements to the cause. It's not a business like in your standard sense of we're a club, we book the DJs, we'll make the money. It's like we've you know, it's such a long-term thing for London, so that if we can sell tickets, then it will keep us going. You know, we're in a temporary building that's going to get knocked down next year. Like, we can keep it going longer and longer if people show up. You know, people didn't show up straight away. It was tough in summer. You know, it always is for clubs. Trying to get people through the door, even when you think you're doing something that London needs so desperately bad, and I still think that it does, no doubt about it. But that has a definite knock on your self-confidence even. Maybe I am doing something wrong, but no, it's such a multi-layered, complex issue that cannot just be thrown away so simply.
I thought it was really interesting what came out about people feeling undervalued. That was not, my impression is that people are kind of in the centre of everything that's going on, but there was a sense of loneliness and people not recognising what promoters are doing, and that's going to, I think, if you're on stage, you're doing the performance, everyone has adrenaline for events, but you have that kind of, people are watching you, whereas the promoter at that point is kind of more in the background. So I'm thinking that is something which is a little bit different from a promoter's perspective.
I think that kind of idea of isolation is an interesting one, because if you throw on an event and 250 people come to your event, but that's 150, 250, 300, 500 people less than you need to break even, that must make you feel lonely, even though you've got 250 people to come to your party, and those 250 people might have had a really good time, and then you're like, fucking hell, I've lost loads of money. And like, that in itself, like that's quite a perverse form of isolation for me. But it must, for a promoter, for you to have like an idea where you need a certain set amount of people to believe in you and to believe in you, and so many variables can go wrong, but then for you to not get that must feel so tough at times.
I think like it's quite common as a promoter that if you sell out a show, if you sell out 10 shows, you quite forget them quite quickly. So when something is done, it's done, and you straight away move and work on what needs to be improved. So you're constantly focusing on what's going not very well. And when you're doing a party, as I said, and you need 1,000 people, you got 200, it's you've been working on that for 6 months, and you basically ruin 1 year of your work. It's very hard to don't feel isolated, don't feel like a failure, because you basically put everything you had on that. And and it's very hard like to enjoy as well, to enjoy the party with the other people. You just stay on the back and just crying over.
Yeah. Another thing that's kind of come up from the comments and stuff is that this idea that the music promoters, how do I articulate this properly, maybe aren't quite as friendly to each other as perhaps, you know, other industries. And obviously, you know, every industry and every business, there's a degree of competition. But I'm going to say this nicely, but one of the problems someone said was other C-word promoters. Then there was, I think the word agents, F word, came up quite a lot. This is a bit more polite way of saying the almost tribal rivalry between promoters in the same city. There's a lot of talk about monopolies, and there's this idea that, this varies obviously region to region, music genre to genre, and promoter to promoter, but that family spirit isn't always there in music promoters, and that is across the board. And do you think that there's something very individual about this, this particular type of music industry that makes mental health issues more prevalent?
I think it's a bit the culture of the full industry. I don't know if you remember what happened with Jeremy Underground and his agent a few months ago, and everyone was shocked about the way the agent was talking to the promoter. And I was reading the article, and it was quite funny because that was a normal day in the office for me. It was like, okay, that's, and if you work in the industry, you get used to this kind of unfriendly environment.
Just so the audience knows, the agent said, "I will fucking bite you." Various mafioso kind of that happens on a daily basis.
It's not at the level, but you can put in the same kind of circle.
That would fuck my mental health up if that happened to me every
and
day.
it's. I'm not joking. I can show you a couple of emails. I'm just saying that.
Oh, wow.
Okay, we'll save that for the end of the. You can tell us in vivid detail about that.
So if this kind of unfriendly environment is coming from managers, then from managers going to the booking agent, from the booking agent is going to the label, and from the label is going to the promoters, and that's where all the.
And no one turns up for your party anyway. At the end, it's just a horrible vicious circle, isn't it?
It's not horrible, but obviously there is a problem that needs to be fixed in the full industry, and it's good that someone is pointing out, is putting a spotlight on this.
I'm going to ask you about this, Matt, obviously, because you've been experiencing dance music in particular, where, I've heard some iconic stories about promoters I'm not going to say in front of it. But do you think that the fact that this sort of behaviour has happened for years, and that only now we're coming to see it coming to the forefront?
I don't know if anyone else in the audience heard, but there's a gentleman down the front here, are you a promoter, saying he had a gun pulled on him. So I was kind of thinking about the underworld and the gangster element in promoting. I know in the acid house days, with the illegal raves, it was a lot more open to that. There are a lot of stories of promoters having, football hooligans pulling guns on them, having, money taken. And I guess it's still going on. If that was a recent story, I don't know if you guys have experienced things like that, but that's another huge element of stress when you've got big, working with large amounts of money, or you're a successful club, and then other club promoters who might be a bit shady, might want to muscle in. I don't know. Perhaps you guys have got a better idea than me, but
probably things I'd rather not think about. I've got enough on my plate, but yeah, I think. Fritz. No, I don't think we really have to. We haven't had to worry about that as a club so far, luckily. Luckily we've got an ace team of security that kind of, they're watching what's going on with the club at all times, and but definitely not. Wouldn't want to, just assume that it's not going to happen, because anything can happen. I think the whole with the music industry, it's a fickle world. People, when we started trying to book DJs at the start of when we first opened and things like that, it was really hard to kind of break in to the to be able to even just talk to agents. You can sometimes get replies from their assistants because they don't know who you are. They don't really care. Like, you know, say you say a new club in London, like, you know, like, what? I thought they were shutting them all down. Like, so what do you mean you're a new club? So it's trying to get like a certain rep. If you haven't got the rep, then you're probably not going to get very good acts. And, you know, how are you going to sell 1,000 tickets? It's a kind of self-perpetuating thing. So, yeah, it's there's many things to think about with regards to that.
Okay, moving away slightly from the kind of the problems and the issues that people have faced. One thing that we also asked the promoters within the survey is whether they felt there should be a support network built up. And this was, again, one of the most surprising things because it was very mixed. So I'll just find some of the responses that we've got. Some people says, yes, I'd love to have financial support. I get support already. It would be helpful. And then a couple of people were like, it's just part of the job, you know, suck it up and deal with it, which was, you know, quite strange for people to think. And then one thing was, how can you support someone who wants you to sell something? A promoter is on their own or normally with a team. So that in itself is this, you know, are you asking the general public to fund these sorts of things and stuff? So there was quite a mixed sort of response, and people saying they would like support, but they maybe didn't feel it. So I'm going to open this to Christine and Claire here. What do you think can, you know, and stuff that you offer individually, but what do you think should be done to help promoters?
Well, we've just last week did a panel session looking at the support we could give people about to go on tour and tour managers who were talking about similar sorts of issues. And we had the same kind of thing where people were saying, yeah, we do need support, but actually, you know, once you've got the experience, it's fine. And it's a bit like you've got to go through a baptism of fire, and if you survive, then you'll be all right. And I kind of don't feel that that's okay. I think, you know, there are lots of different professions, different jobs around that people do, and you work it out on your own, but at some point somebody says, well, we can bottle this into some form of advice that we can give you before you go out on the road, before you go off and do your job. In my area, you know, the junior doctors stop working, have a ridiculous numbers a week to only 72 hours a week, and the older doctors, some of them were saying, well, you know, I did it and didn't do me any harm. And I don't think that helps. It doesn't. We're trying to keep people healthy. We're trying to get them to sustain a career, to be able to do it to the best of their ability, not to put additional barriers in the way when the job is already quite difficult. So I think there are some support sessions we can do that prepare you for the sorts of things. And I don't necessarily, I'm sure there's formal training that could be done, but even short interventions which allow people to say, well, this is what it's like, and this is what I did, this is how I learned, and if I had my time again, this is what I put in place in order to keep me sane, to keep me healthy, to sustain this as a career. And I think that's totally possible to do. We've done it working together with different groups, and I think we could certainly try and facilitate that for promoters.
Yeah, I believe that, you know, our charity as a health and welfare charity has a duty actually to provide us support, I think, or the music industry actually has a duty of care over those who are working within it, promoters or otherwise. I mean, I talked about Music Minds Matter earlier. So Music Minds Matter is a mental health helpline and support service for people working in music that we launched in December last year. So it's, whilst helplines are often thought of as crisis points, actually about 70% of people who've called since December have actually just wanted someone to talk to. And actually, so I think that support network's really, really important, as in this is important. This is awareness, this is us talking about it. It's actually a really important first step. So our support line, and I have cards with me, but the number for anyone who may want to use it tonight is 0808 802 8008. It's completely free, it's confidential, it's 24/7. Call it any time of day, night, any time of the year. And yeah, you have a listening ear there, so someone to listen, someone to talk to, which is, sometimes it's difficult, I know, to talk to people that you're around, or if you are a promoter and you're on your own, who do you talk to, especially when you have a job to do? But also we provide legal advice and debt advice, realizing that mental health just isn't something that happens in isolation. It's often connected to other issues, as I said earlier. And for those who need it, we have free therapies. We offer free therapy and counselling So yeah, I'd urge any of you or to use it if you need someone to talk to, or and to tell people. But I think working in partnership is really important. I think you've said a support network. I think actually the industry itself should become a support network and talk to each other. Like our charity, you know, this is great for me because it puts a spotlight on promoters, and our charity needs to look more at what we can do specifically for promoters. So, but I think the industry, yeah, has a duty to become a support network in itself, from independent to majors, to charities, to organizations. Yeah, I think it's really important.
Okay, Matt, obviously you work as a psychotherapist. What sort of things do you think you and your industry in particular can offer, you know, promoters and things that, you know?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I see, you know, I've got a few DJs and musicians, and I've had manager as clients, but I've never had a promoter. But I know, you know, some of my work with you know, people in the music industry can be, you know, helping them sort of untangle their persona with their, I suppose their authentic self with their music industry persona, if you like. So, you know, sometimes I guess, you know, if things are going well, it can all be good, and then, you know, if, you know, I suppose if a track's out and it's not doing as well, or gigs are going down, then, you know, then the impact can be depression or low mood. So it's you know, it can be helping them find, you know, like you know, the sort of self they were before there was this, you know, music industry persona. And maybe it's the same with promoting, you know. Perhaps, you know, if a night's going really well, then perhaps everything feels good, and you feel more, I don't know, secure in yourself. And then, you know, if things start going not so well, perhaps that can impact how you feel with your family or how you feel with your friends. You know, so it's sort of helping clients sort of develop a bit of a core sort of beyond, you know, the music industry and the self that they might be in the music industry, which could often be a persona, you know, a mask, you know. And I guess especially for promoters, perhaps there's a bit of bravado, there's, you know, there's a bit of a kind of Teflon kind of, you know, I don't know, but, you know, that's some of the work I do with my music industry clients.
That's quite an interesting point, because obviously music promoters, much the same as anyone in any profession, a lot of their identity is tied up in what they do. And, you know, music promotions, you can run a really successful club night, or be a really successful live promoter, and then there can be a sea change and a shift in what you're about. And if you don't adjust to that quickly enough, you know, that must be a really crushing component of like your identity. So how do music promoters react to that and realise that, you know, perhaps there is a life beyond music at times? Is that something that, you know, people feel is going to, you know, have a negative impact, or is there a way for us to kind of like pave that path a little bit smoother?
I don't know, like, what, you know, one of the things I might do with clients if, you know, things aren't going so well with their career and they're in music is try and sort of reconnect them with the thing they loved about music in the first place. You know, what music did they grow up to? What did their parents play in the house? What's their favourite tune? You know, what do they feel like when they hear music? You know, so it's sort of getting, because sometimes, you know, people can lose the love, you know, and this is coming from me personally as a DJ and a music producer. You know, I've had some ups and downs, I've had some things in the charts, and then suddenly you're not flavour of the month anymore, you know. And, you know, you're like a bad review of an album can kind of last, you know, a month. So it's sort of, you know, I think it's important just, you know, to remember what you love about music. Music's therapeutic, you know, when you're hearing your favourite tune and you're out you know, on a dance floor, it can be such a good buzz, you know. So it's just, you know, sometimes it can be reconnecting people with what they, you know, what they really loved in the first place.
Kind of like on a similar theme, obviously, when we did the study, we realised we weren't the first people within the music industry to talk about mental health. Obviously, with the stuff that you two have done in the past, that we were kind of inspired by that, but also the general discourse within the music industry about mental health. There's been a lot of artists that have come out, you know, pop artists such as Lily Allen, DJs like Ben Pearce, even Carl Cox has talked about depression. So they're kind of, you know, almost the positive viewpoints of this, but then on the negative level, you've had Avicii kill himself with these sorts of things, and it almost feels to me, and I'm speaking on behalf of Skiddle when I say this, and I understand probably a lot of people as well, in that the music industry seems to have wised up to mental health more, but perhaps that hasn't happened quickly enough with music promoters, and that we haven't done this thing. So is that something where, if you forgive the expression, that we can kind of ride on the crest of that awareness and power the changes through? That, again, is a question to anyone on the panel.
I think that a lot of DJs start talking about that, which is good. And there is a lot of awareness on mental health for musicians, and artists in general, which is amazing. A promoter is someone that's working in the background. I'm not sure how many people outside from the music industry really knows what a promoter is doing. How much work is promoting a show, booking an artist, paying everything in advance, and relying on ticket sales, and some people with a room of 200 people, £5 per person. This guy made £1,000, and you probably lost 5,000 on the same night. So I think that's one of the reasons the message about mental health in music promotion didn't go through, because I don't think there is enough awareness of what we're actually doing and how much work and how much stress we have to take to just to put a good night on. And I think you agree with me, and you might agree with me on that as well.
Yeah, no, I think agree as well. And I think just as we kind of come to the close before we ask you guys for some questions, I don't want this to be a completely negative, discourse. Obviously, the fact that all these damn statistics, we're getting people saying they still want to be in the music industry. Matt, your point about with your clients trying to get them to reconnect with what it is they found. Music promoters don't start a night because they want to make money, and if they do, let's face it, that's a pretty stupid thing to go for. You know what I mean? They do it because they're really into music. They're passionate. They love what they're about. They want to change industry, or for whatever. You ask any music promoter, and when they started, and correct me if I'm wrong here, there was an almost altruistic belief to do something positive within music, and that when you're getting into situations where you're stressed, you're depressed, in your case you have a gun pulled up against you, all these things that that can make you stop wanting to do that. But what can we do as an industry at large to make sure that people don't forget what it is that they're doing? Because without music promoters, we wouldn't have any of the events that we need in the industry to keep it going. Certainly to keep me in a job, but everybody else as well. So that again is a sort of a final question to all 5 panelists. What can we do more to make sure that we don't lose sight of the reasons people get involved in music promotions in the start?
I personally love it. Love working in the music industry. I love putting an eye on, and I love being a music promoter. And I see myself doing this as much as possible. Awareness, talking about this, having support, it's probably the first step to change a bit the culture inside the music promotion. And it doesn't take much to change and adjust a few things. And to make this place, just this job, this profession, just a little bit more easy for everyone involved. That's it. At least in terms of your mental health, because then the job itself is quite hard.
Okay. Anyone else got any further thoughts?
Yeah, I would support that. I'd say if you're creating an environment which allows people to be healthy, then therefore people will enjoy their jobs better. Or creating a different industry, and that's through creating support for people and talking and awareness. And just because we want to keep this positive, there are things out there. There are other organizations. There's an organization called Music Support, for example, a charity that looks specifically and is there to help people with drug and addiction issues specifically. There's an organization called Music for Mental Wealth offering coaching. So I'm just flagging those for anyone in this room who needs support right now. I think just creating that healthy environment where people can actually thrive and enjoy their job and remember why they're there, because they don't have to worry about the other things.
I totally agree with that, and I like the idea that with a small cultural shift, then things could improve. And one of the things I was thinking about was the idea of the support network, actually people understanding what stress looks like and being able to help their colleagues to seek help at the point when they need it at an earlier phase, rather than waiting until they're really, really sick and need some very substantial help. And I think there's probably quite a lot that could be done for that, so as well as kind of preventing some of the problems from arising, actually recognising them earlier.
Anyone else want to discuss on that? Or yeah?
I just want to say, I think that you've said, I think this is putting a spotlight on promoters. I think this tonight is a really important first step to actually start to do something specifically for promoters. And I think educating people actually is a really big part of it. And I think that what Skiddle have done tonight is to start to do that, which is brilliant.
Thanks. Okay, I'm going to open up questions to the audience. Do you want to start with your story? Do you want to elaborate any further? Because that seemed pretty interesting. Just want to explain.
All right. My name is Ian. I am Taurus. Music promoter in London, was in Sheffield. I've been doing it for 15 years. Luckily now I'm also a venue manager. Can you put your hands up if you're actually a music promoter who's here? All right. Okay. So this is one of the key things for me, is like actually being a music promoter. I mean, you guys have said a lot of really, really good things, but there are a few little points that I probably want to pull up on. Is when if you're worried about our actual mental health as promoters, and when you were on about, you're going to lose money, you're going to make money, this, that, and the other. Promoters in the room, have you explained what you do for a living to your friends and how the business works? And they've gone, are you actually fucking mental?
I got to explain it to my wife, mate. And
yeah. So one of the key things that I've noticed is, for me, a lot of stress has happened through stuff I've done. I took 6 weeks off at the end of the last year, got signed off, ended up in like Wembley Arena, watching Queens of the Stone Age. Monsters started flying at me. I was so sleep deprived, I was so gone, that I ended up having like a massive panic attack, running out of the arena and just collapsing on the floor because work had just got that much, because there's so many things that we don't recognize as promoters. Key thing is the fear factor of not getting the show. Like I've actually built in a system now where I don't have alerts for my email. I only check my email now when I'm on my computer during working hours. For some people, it's not that easy, and it's a hell of a lot to give up, because in the past I'd have missed my phone at 10:30 at night. Someone was offering me a show, but because I didn't reply within a nanosecond, they gave that show to someone else. And that person who's your competitor promoter is the C word that you mentioned earlier, as compared, that then makes £2,000. So you're literally strapped to the job. You're scared to take holiday. Like 2 weeks on holiday is basically you going like, oh, just going through my emails. Hey, we want to do a Coldplay underplay at your venue. Do you want to promote it on a 15 quid ticket? And you're just like, fucking what? And it drives you insane. One of the big things, though, that I want to make, like, for other people to understand that don't actually understand the promoter, is like, without us, there's nothing. If there was like a musicians union of professional promoters in entertainment trade, aka Muppet for short, without us, there's nothing. We don't put the show on. The band don't get paid, the manager doesn't get paid, the agent doesn't get paid. I've got a lot of great friends who are agents, but the deal that we have to do in England is the thing that causes more stress than anything else. It's the reason why it's so easy to lose money is because of the actual amount we actually have to pay for artists. You go to mainland Europe, you'll get a guarantee versus 60% in a lot of places. When I was first working in music 15 years ago, I had people, I wanted to break through, so it was like, here's the guarantee on a versus or plus 85% deal. So you could probably sell the show out, make 600 quid, and the band walk away with 10 grand. So I think, you know, when we're saying about, you know, mental health within the music industry for promoters, is like, we don't get a fair deal. Simple as that. And it comes from the top all the way down. It's not all on the agents. It's the band has a conversation with the manager then goes to the agent who says, you've got to get me £1,000 a night or you're sacked as an agent. The agent puts the pressure on the promoter puts the show on, the promoter fucks it completely because he's scared that he's going to lose the other artists on the roster. They lose 500 quid, the band gets paid, the manager gets paid, the agent gets paid. So for me, it's more about fairness in what I'm actually paying for, because I've paid a lot of money for some right shite in the past, if I'm perfectly honest, yeah? I'm just there going like, why the fuck did I put this on? It's absolute wank, yeah? Because you feel forced into that position. You might have noticed I'm northern, so I'm not scared to talk, all right? Bollocks to this, like, I've been at the bottom of the barrel through being a music promoter. I've also done shows for, like, Gary Newman and had to get a taxi and get my mate round because I got that much money in my backpack. But then there's other times when you put a show on that you love, doesn't work out, and you know, we don't feel success as promoters anymore. All we remember is the fucking losses. All of it. That's it. That's as simple as that. So maybe not a question. Anyway, the gun thing was Blue Cantrell. You remember her? Tour managers comes up at the end. It was like $8,000 in cash in a briefcase. Slam, and so it was like, okay, so borrowed my dad's shit briefcase. Had to get it all out in cash, yeah? And he just comes in and then just sticks a fucking gold-plated Desert Eagle on the table. It's like, I don't need to count it, do I? Thanks.
Can anyone top that? Anyone?
Should be up here.
Thank you. You might probably have to come on. I think it's going to stretch.
Hello, my name is George. I'm here on behalf of the London Promoters Society, which I sort of guess it wasn't intentionally started with the idea of improving promoters' mental health, but thinking about it, I was just joking with my friend behind me. It's sort of like, actually, it's like a giant group therapy for promoters who just get to moan at each other and tell stories like that, which is quite entertaining, really. No, we do actually generally talk about some quite useful and interesting stuff. Called Gaz, who's run a night in London for 40 years, I think, called Gaz's Rockin' Blues, which is a pretty impressive effort. And he had a theory that a night was an extension of the promoter's personality. So obviously, if you put on a night, that's an extension of your personality. That's a big deal. So we sort of are beginning to understand how that feels and how that looks publicly as well. To me, it kind of feels like it's the point of the weekend of the music industry where it's like Sunday 3 p.m. and you realise you've got your family dinner in 3 hours and you really need to do something about it because everyone's mental health is getting a bit tight on the line. So it's like, well, what do we do about it? I think something that's really useful is online toolkits. Something the London Promoter Society is currently developing is a really kick-ass website where promoters can get everything they need, like venue information. I would absolutely love it if you guys, wonderful, charitable people, would like to write us a toolkit about how to improve promoter mental health, and we can just let people download it and they can do it, and then it does it itself, because that's really efficient. Promoter Society, there's one in Manchester, I know that. There's Brighton Social Sound. It's a Brighton-based, essentially, promoter society. And it allows a sort of peer-to-peer thing where that actually works really well, whereas it's not a sort of hierarchical thing where people could just talk and be and relate, because I know being a promoter is quite an isolating thing, perversely, when you're in a group of like 1,000 people who are looking at you, even though you're behind the scenes. So to be able to relate to people who actually do the same things as you is, I think, really important and something that I'm really getting out of the things. Brief plug, the next thing is our website launch on October the 30th at Grow Hackney. You want to be there because it's good for your mental health.
Thanks a lot. That's interesting to hear. I mean, I live in Liverpool, and I was a promoter years ago. And when I was a promoter, I actually wanted to outdo people I promoted a night with, let alone other promoters. And something I've noticed in Liverpool is that that kind of culture has changed a bit. There's still a little bit of cutthroatness that goes on, but there's a lot more communication. And it's interesting that, you know, all of you here, or not all of you, sorry, but there's a large proportion of people here that are music promoters. And, you know, you could talk to each other. You can, you know, share these stories, you can share these experiences, and I do think that sticking together for, you know, music promoters is something that happens a lot more maybe now, certainly in my very limited experience of it. And to hear that there is a society set up here, and there's, you know, one in Manchester, right, it's really positive, and I think it's something we can all agree with. Is there anyone else who's got a question? Just a question, actually, because we've had a lot of statements, but question yet?
Hey, I'm Atch. I run a company called Killing Moon. So we're a promoter on top of being a record label management company. I'm also a director at the Association of Independent Music. So we do discuss mental health issues rather holistically as far as the overarching music industry is concerned. Firstly, thank you for all the insight that you guys have done. It's actually you know, it's quite refreshing to hear that so localized towards promotions in particular. My question relates to some of the comments raised towards the end of the panel in terms of the environments that people are working in, and that it is inferably easier to make slight changes to improve the mental health conditions for people in those working environments. But again, holistically, with the qualification that the music industry is enjoying exponential growth in terms of finances, in terms of economics, in terms of rights, why do you feel that those changes haven't been implemented yet?
As you said, the margin of profit in music promotion are very small, which means most of the independent companies are made of 5 or 6 people, which are promoters, bookers, and production managers. None of them have the knowledge or the time to study HR, psychology, or understanding how to improve things because they are too busy on doing their own work. I'm sure that if you go in Live Nation or if you go on one of the majors, they have an office where you can go to have a talk to them, say I feel stressed. While when you're working independent, if you feel stressed, you keep it for yourself because you got things to do. So I think that's one of the main reasons. Probably if you're talking to the people working at the roots of the promotion, it's something that hasn't yet started, to change.
I think that's a really interesting point. Obviously, a lot of promoters are essentially startup businesses, and typically one of the problems that faces entrepreneurs is they're not human resources, they're not managers, they're just creative people with a good idea. And that, how do you go from a music promoter to sudden success to being able to run a huge organisation and be a management on that level? So I think that probably is quite a difficult proposition for this industry. Is there something you guys could maybe help in terms of support with that?
Yeah, it's thinking about the music industry, right? If you look at other sectors, they all have HR departments, They all have HR departments who look at this, who look after the well-being. There's policies, there's protocols, people are looked after. I think that the conversation really around mental health in the music industry probably didn't start until 2016. People started coming out to talk about it publicly. I mean, that's the first time we did our piece of research, and it was the first research to exist globally, which is which is surprising. So I think whilst these conversations are happening, it's still quite early days, I'd say. But yeah, I'd say that there's no HR department. So what we can do, I mean, some of the things that I've been talking to my colleagues in other organizations is putting in place a code of best practice. So talking to, to industry bodies as a start. I mean, I know there's a huge ecosystem to look up, but at least we can start somewhere where people buy into and pledge to this code of best practice, which actually puts the well-being of people at the heart of it, as so it's not just the commercial kind of money makers. So I think that's one thing. Another thing that we've been thinking about is to get together. I mean, it sounds quite corporate, but I think the concept is there is a music industry mental health task force. So there's task force for lots of different things in the industry. Diversity, obviously, is a big kind of debate and is at the top of the agenda at the moment. But the industry and industries maybe haven't actually got together to talk about it and to say, okay, we all see this as an issue. What are you doing? What are the issues? What can we do together? And obviously promoters and an organisation like yours should have a seat at that table.
Further thoughts?
I think there are a lot of discussions going on at the moment about 0 hours contract, which are well worth keeping an eye on. Government's doing surveys of occupational health services, and particularly small occupational health services, and how they work. And I think there is a bit of a concern generally about people who are self-employed or on 0 hours contract and how they're going to continue to keep healthy, because just at a very large global level, actually, if you haven't got a healthy workforce, then you haven't got much of an economy. And I think that's going to be important for the industry to look at, and we need to look at the sorts of terms and conditions, the sort of models of occupational health that might be coming out of that, and whether they fit the industry and be part of those conversations. So we've got a conference coming up with the industry, with public health, who are looking at the health of the population, and with occupational health doctors to try and look at the models of occupational health at a strategic level that might fit in order to feed that into the conversation. If you look at the suicide statistics, they're really frightening reading, and some of the high-level occupational groups, highest levels of suicide in occupational groups are construction, agriculture, and then not very far down on the list is the arts industry. And a lot of those all characterised by being self-employed, by not having that kind of support network. And some of them are legislated for because of, you know, the health and safety executive come out and say, right, well, you must do X, Y, and Z if you're going to work in this industry. I don't think that's probably the way that the music industry wants to go, but there are tools that can be used to make people a bit safer in their work. So I think this is a big conversation. I don't think there are any immediate answers, but it's good that people are starting to talk about it.
Okay, thank you. That was an excellent question. Cheers. You've got time for one more question. Yeah? Go for it.
Hiya. My name's Asher. I am kind of on the other side of the spectrum to you guys in regards to the amount of time I've been doing this. So I've been promoting for pretty much about a year now. This is as like a regular job. Admittedly, I was kind of hoping to come today to feel less anxious about it, but you guys have scared the shit out of me. So I was hoping to kind of maybe sort that out a little bit. So I was going to ask, as someone in my position that is trying to break through in this industry, battling against much larger scale promoters, what advice would you give to someone like me in regards to trying to keep your head above the water in regards to mental health and just trying to push through, basically?
Who wants to reassure him?
I've been doing this for, I think, 6 years now, more or less. And it's hard at the beginning, and then it's get easier when you start getting a bit more experience because just you get used to it. And when a show goes wrong, it's horrible, and that doesn't change. It's just shite. Sorry. I mean, I think it's not, the thing that makes the difference for us is that we really love music, yeah? So the job, it's also part of your life, if not like almost all your life or your passion. At some point, you need to understand that if you want to keep alive in this industry, that it's not all about what you're doing. It's not about your job. You got things that's how it's dead, and it's not about a show that's going bad. And you have to enjoy and appreciate the things that are going very well, and you need to try to find good things in shows that are not going very well. It's always like a learning curve. So, yeah, it's basically just trying to keep your mind always open to the other side. There's no music promotion.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I think just try and I'm not saying don't dream big, but I think the easiest way to keep on top of things like that is just to be realistic with your targets and your goals and what you expect of yourself. Because I think for me, what I found that when things really went south, have gone south in the past, is when I've tried to do things that I wasn't ready for. And then as soon as you've realised that you're locked into this thing and you're actually like, I'm nowhere near ready for what's about to happen, and I can't do it either anyway. So, and that's when things start to really kind of pile up, and money becomes an issue, friendships go south. These things just kind of self-perpetuate, and it's a vicious circle. So I think just try and keep on top of it in that sense, without obviously always aim high, but yeah, don't be too big a risk taker at the start, for sure.
That's interesting. One thing we encounter when we deal with promoters at Skiddle is we get a lot of promoters that make the same mistakes over and over again, and you'll get people that will book a DJ they really want to see, rather than a DJ that other people want to see. Yeah, we've all been there, and I think one, you know, everybody makes these mistakes, but if you get told what other people's mistakes are, listen. That would be one of the key things. And I mean, I've seen that, you know, people in the bucket, and you know, they lose a few £100 maybe at the smaller level, but at bigger levels, it's, you know, tens of thousands of pounds. You know, there's been people that have like lost their houses, lost their marriages because something, you know, they've believed too much in something. So maybe you should never ever stop being ambitious. But if you're getting advice from other promoters and other people, and they've made these mistakes, don't make the same ones. That would be kind of my kind of advice. But definitely don't stop, 100%. Okay, thanks ever so much to all the panelists tonight, and thank you for all the questions and for all being here, and I hope that you've taken something from this. This panel is being televised, I think. It's on YouTube, on Skiddle's YouTube, so you can see it on there. But again, skiddle.com, mental health is where you can find further things. And if any of you got any thoughts and, you know, you want to speak to me after this is gone, but please get in touch with us, because we want to hear as many stories as possible, and we want to be starting, you know, positive change in this arena. But thanks again. Thanks everyone else.